All right, it's time to catch up with Derek Piper, Illini Inquirer basketball reporter and analyst. Back from Peach Jam, which for the last, 7, 8 years we've done this, Derek. I know it's been one of your favorite trips, but let's start here. What is Peach Jam? Why is it important? Why is this July early evaluation period important?
It's the culmination of the entire shoe brand circuits are having their championships this week, and you play throughout the spring, and it's essentially a league, and they have standings that you jockey for position to be able to make it to Peach Jam, and that's where you have pool play that goes into bracket play. But really, it's the best of the best, and EYBL for as long as I've been on it has been the best league in terms of the depth of talent, the most high major caliber prospects are going to be on the floor at one time. And you go down to North Augusta, South Carolina, and I mean, it's a big deal. And people probably saw on Twitter that, LeBron was there coaching his son. You got Carmelo, because you got a lot of these teams that are sponsored by these pros now. I mean, Bradley Beal has a team, Chris Paul has a team, all those guys were there. So to just be able to have that environment where you get all the coaches around the country in that building, and you get national media, you get scouts, you get and then just the top talent in the country battling each other. And it's always a great environment because there's great turnout from the locals around Augusta to people coming from Atlanta to people wanting to maybe make a further trip, just watch guys from the team that they're recruiting for. So it's really cool. It's a fun event. It's high level basketball. I've talked about before that for whatever rap AAU gets, I think it really is EYBL and particularly Peach Jam is outside of that realm. I think it's good basketball. I think it's pretty well coached. It's guys trying to win and trying to get that Peach Jam title, and being there is pretty cool.
Yeah, and the NBA scouts really go to this thing as well before the coaches get there. How has it changed, Derek, over the last couple of years?
I think that's a great point. I think that's something different where you get the NBA scouts in that type of a mix. They've added on to the facility there, so there's more of a demand of people getting in the buildings to be able to go over there and be able to see whatever they can, because you get to the Saturdays and the real bracket play, and it's hard to find a seat. I mean, you got lines; they're turning people away at some point. Like, I don't know that. I was in there for a game where LeBron was coaching, and they couldn't let everybody in the gym because there was just so much of a demand for people to get in there and see it. So they've tried to expand as much as they can within that building. That's something that's happened as well. And I'll be honest, they've locked it down a little bit more from the media side. It used to be kind of free reign, like you'd be able to sit wherever you wanted to sit as a media person. You'd have a little bit more media access than you get maybe nowadays, and it's harder to get that credential around your neck. I'll say that, but that's one thing that's changed too.
It's a confluence of basketball people, right? Whether it's these young hot prospects, the coaches, as you've mentioned, the NBA players, whether they're coaching the team or owning the team. What is the fun part about this? And you see the national guys talking about this is you can talk about basketball, the hot topics of basketball. So like, what is the main chatter about right now among all these basketball people about the world of college basketball right now?
NIL is definitely coming up when you think about just the crazy numbers that are out there. There's the talk of, hey, how much of the buzz that then translates to people getting paid this type of money, and the transfer portal. I mean, the fact of the window. I mean, coaches are really frustrated. The fact that guys could still hit the portal tomorrow as grad transfers or after the end of this summer session, and just the what you're putting coaches through to build these rosters and the unfinal like deadlines, like just the fact of they're in a really tough spot as far as that goes. And the recruiting cycle is, they've added more stuff to it throughout the years to be able to give them. You can go to Top 100 camp now to be able to watch them. You can go to the USA trials. You can go out in June now to watch guys in their high school settings with their high school teams. But really, you're putting coaches on the road a ton throughout the summer. Factor it in now where there's not the initial time after the season to take the breath and kind of relax, because you're recruiting your roster, you're recruiting transfers, and there's some burnout. I mean, you hear from coaches, and I had someone tell me, and I've heard it actually multiple times throughout the summer, is like, hey, if something doesn't change, you're going to see another wave of guys. We've already seen Jay Wright. I mean, Coach K was getting up there, Roy Williams was getting up there, but guys would just say, this isn't for me. It's too much, and I've made enough money, or I've had enough success that I'm getting out of it. So there's some of that talk as well.
Yeah, and the NIL thing, I just wonder, like, coaches, some of these coaches, it helps. Like, let's be honest, like Brad Underwood, it helps, right? Like for his program. For other schools, I would imagine it's difficult. Like a Chris Collins, I mean, Northwestern's dealing with a bunch of stuff, but for Chris Collins, it's probably not a good thing. For Illinois State, I don't know if that's helping Ryan Peden at all. So what's the conversation about, like, with NIL with coaches?
I think some are a little frustrated that they don't maybe have more backing or more forward thinking in that front. I can't help but look and see Steve Peichel in the gym and wonder what he's thinking about with Mulcahy hitting the portal. Although it sounds like maybe Rutgers is taking a little bit of a different route, where the NIL resources that they do have, they want to kind of use in getting some high school prospects. So they have one of the top guys in the 24 class currently committed to them, and then they're a big factor for Dylan Harper, who's Ron Harper Jr.'s brother, and to try to get really essentially the top two prospects in 24 to go to Rutgers, which is just hard to even comprehend. But there's a limitation there. Like, you can't maybe do all the roster retaining with the NIL as you'd want, versus trying to save some of that money for going out there and being able to offer it to high school kids too. So, and then there's those that have benefited from it. I think Brad Underwood will wear a smile on his face for the most part whenever anybody's asking how's NIL going at Illinois. I think they're doing pretty well. And there has been, I was talking to one coach that said, some jobs got better with NIL, because you always had the situation of a hungry alumni base that wanted to get involved, but maybe a coach in particular, or just a program, didn't want to push past
athletic directors that did not
directors.
want to play in that gray area. Yeah. I mean, let's be like, if I'm Bruce Weber and I'm thinking about, man, what could I have done with NIL? Could I have gotten Julian Wright? Could I have gotten Sharon Collins? Now, you had to be Kansas and Bill Self for those guys. I don't know if Weber would have been able to do that. Or you, John Gross. Does Cliff Alexander happen? Right? Juwan Evans. Does that happen? We know what happened at Oklahoma State now, right? With some of that stuff. And you can't help but think, how would the world have changed for those guys? Not saying they would have had great success, but I think you had a better chance at some of these top prospects.
No doubt. I mean, maybe you could have actually had a legit sit-down conversation with Derrick Rose. Can you imagine what those numbers would have been if you're Illinois and Derrick Rose?
Great point.
Yeah, and John Gross for sure. I mean, Cliff Alexander was a prime example of a recruitment that was pretty complicated, and you need to I mean, he had a high demand. Cliff was one of the top prospects in the country, and Illinois, in that type of a sense, was in some battles with some programs that were maybe dabbling a little bit more in the gray area. And I think that was something that obviously Bruce Weber, I mean, it's pretty well documented and well talked about in Illini circles, that he really wasn't interested in blurring those lines and going too far in that. And I think John Gross was fairly similar. So I think that Illinois has always had a really well-entrenched and deep alumni base that wants to get involved, that has been so hungry to win through the years, that that opportunity to get involved and to really, within the rules, be able to impact that. I think that's something that Illinois could have done. And yeah, there are a number of prospects, not to like come out and say that, all these guys got bought or whatever, but there's no doubt that Illinois could have done more on that front. And maybe Bruce Weber has a longer tenure of success and doesn't have to worry about. I mean, he's a guy that's sitting there saying, I'm not going to cut my hair until these cheaters are out of the game. I mean, it's changed what cheating is. It's not.
Yeah, does Eric Gordon stick around? I don't know. Eric Gordon's still in the NBA. Like, it's all this time later. He's a pretty dang good player. Could have helped him. All right, Derek, I do want to bring up what you saw down in Peach Jam. And one of the standouts, not only because we are watching because he's an Illini commit, but nationally, was Morez Johnson, who has been committed to Illinois for almost 2 years now, still a year away from joining the program. But you were there. What did you see from Morez Johnson last week?
Morez was awesome, and a guy that has always been a plus athlete, really physical and high motored, and a great on the glass. Someone that defensively can really cover a lot of ground, and he just battles. He battles his butt off. Now you're seeing like the offensive package has really come along impressively. This was the most opportunity I had to sit down and watch him since really the high school season. So getting a chance to see the confidence that he now has offensively. I think back to last year, he's playing with James Brown, which presented a challenge really for both those guys to really try to coexist with each other. A lot of times Morez was playing kind of free throw line extended, maybe even out to the perimeter, that high-low action, which I thought Morez did a good job of getting the ball to James and vice versa. But now it's with James playing Mocan lead and moving on from those guys being teammates really both at high school and AAU. It's Morez's team. It's Morez his job to demand the ball inside. And I thought still around the free throw line did some good things because now all of a sudden he can face you up, he can drive you, he can spin, he can finish with either hand. And those are all things that as you look back in his progression, it's like, okay, he's got a lot of things that you like, but the polish offensively just isn't where you want it. He's still fairly raw. He doesn't have a ton of moves to go to. Maybe doesn't have the most confidence in what he can do in terms of just being able to diversify his game. So he has that. He's knocked down a couple of jumpers. I mean, you see his highlights from the top 100 camp. I know that was something that when I read and watched what he was able to do, he can take that shot, and it's not his strength by any means, but it's just something that he's worked on and is showing flashes of that there's growth there. And he did that as well. So to put up the numbers that he did, I mean, there were games where he had 15, 16, 17 rebounds, led the EYBL and boards, was as impactful and productive as anybody on the circuit at the 17U level. So he was awesome. They went undefeated in pool play, lost a tough one, their first game of a bracket play to the Wrens against Dylan Harper, number one player in 2024. But Morez he was great all week.
I think he's kind of solidified that his role is probably this undersized 5, Derek, right? Like I think you and I have seen like that's probably his role. He's not the tallest guy, but he's long. He's obviously the work ethic and the toughness is through the roof. So as we look forward here, like in a year when he joins this roster, how do you see him making an impact right away? And how do you see him kind of fitting in with a group that includes Dane Danger, low post guy, a group that includes Amani Hansberry, maybe can be more of a face up, and Ty Rogers, who's not a great shooter to this point. How do you see him kind of fitting into this roster?
I love that physically he's going to be pretty ready. I mean, his lower body strength, I mean, the ability to just drive people under the basket when he's going for offensive rebounds. And I mean, he's got some big thighs. He's put the work in the weight room, and just imagine a year from now, or give him a summer with Fletch. I have no concerns of his ability to battle in the Big Ten from the very get-go physically from that standpoint. I think the rim running ability is something that he's really going to be able to do. I mean, we know that Brad would love to play fast as much as possible, and someone that can go rim to rim, be someone that, yeah, he's 6'9". He's not the legit center size in terms of the height, but can provide a little bit of rim protection. But yeah, you said it there. I mean, Dane's going to have another year. If he continues to progress, you're probably looking at Morez playing behind him for at least a season. But I think Morez would be able to come in.
Which could be 15 to 20 minutes, right? Like it still could be significant playing time.
Right, for sure. And we'll see how Amani's progression goes, because I think for him to really play the 4, he's got to have that mid-range shot come along more. And I do like I think he handles it well for his size. He passes it extremely well from the perimeter. So he's going to have a little bit of versatility there, probably more of an undersized 5 coming in. And the same thing with Morez. I mean, if Morez gets the jump shot going, could he slide into some 4? Maybe, but he's best at the 5, and that's kind of how he's going to play out there. But he's showing to be someone that's going to be instant impact, even if it's in a bench role right off the bat. But I think he's going to be ready to rebound at a high level, to defend really well, to be that guy inside that can. I mean, he plays through contact really well around the basket, and then now if he's someone that can face you up and do some things too, I mean, that's pretty exciting.
I've kind of mentioned before that Illinois is starting to recruit front court pieces, which it wasn't that long ago, Derek. They really struggled to do this. That Michigan State typically gets. Hansberry reminds me of a Michigan State guy. I know Ty Rodgers, who can't qualify now as a front court piece, but he reminds you of a Michigan State kind of guy, right? And it feels like Morez Johnson's kind of the same thing. So I want to ask you this: like, Brad Underwood's recruited some really good talent, whether Kofi and Io, obviously what they became, but Ty Rodgers, top 50 prospect. Adam Miller, Andre Curbelo, top 50 prospects. What do you think of Morez as a prospect? Like, how does he stack up? Best recruiting get for Illinois since when?
I think probably Kofi. I would say that's probably one. I mean, Morez could end up being ranked higher than Kofi as we push forward. I know our board continues to hound Eric Bossy on his ranking or just his
fifth star. My take is keep him with that fourth star, Derek. Keep that chip on his shoulder. Keep the expectations too, because 5-star. You're kind of expecting a one and done and an all Big Ten caliber play. I don't know if I want to put that on Morez quite yet, but I understand why people want a 5-star. It's a 5-star, right? Like, you get to brag about it.
Yeah, for sure. And Illinois haven't had a McDonald's All-American since Jeremy Richmond, go back to 2010. And I mean,
would you rather have a 5th star or a McDonald's All-American?
You said, would you rather have one or the other?
Yeah. Would you rather have a 5th star or a McDonald's All-American?
I'd
want the Mickey D's. I'd want the Mickey D's. Yeah.
Burger Boy. Illinois could use a Burger Boy. Yeah. I mean, I get it that the fact of you're going to have some front court players that are either more of if he's a center, if you're more of that 7-foot range, or you're going to have more skill. You're going to have guys that can stretch it out and shoot it more effectively, be more skilled off the bounce and everything. But for what he brings, I mean, his strengths are he dominated at Peach Jam. Like the fact that physicality, rebounding, finishing around the basket, I mean, he's just dominant, and it was hard to deal with. And that's a high level of competition. And then you get some of the offensive progression that he's made. I understand why people think that. And I mean, Bossy put him as one of the biggest stock risers of the first live period, and he already elevated into the top 50 going into this month. So the idea that he could jump into from top 50 to top 30, could he push a 5-star? I think that's all within the range of possibility. And even just being on the radar of a legit McDonald's All-American prospect, I think that's something that he's worthy of. Is it going to play out that way? We'll see. But fans probably worry too much about it. I get the passion. I get the
he's the same player regardless, right?
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation in terms of best get. I mean, Sky Clark was highly touted.
Adam Miller was a heck of a prospect. Had a pretty good freshman year too.
He was too. Yeah. I mean, he was in that top 40, pushing top 30 type of range. If he is better, it's hard to say that he's better than Kofi. We know what we got out of Kofi ultimately. Io, of course. I mean, 24/7 even had Io as a 5-star. So I would probably say Kofi. And there have been some good gets through the years for sure. So
I was listening to you and Lon the other day, and you guys, I texted you. You guys were talking about Illini comps. There's just not a lot of guys, and I was like, taller LaRon Black maybe, but really the guy I started to settle on was James Augustine, rim runner, toughness, rebounding, and I hate James Augustine turns into like a program legend, all-time leading rebounder, but Illinois just hasn't had a guy like that. I mean, Augie was 6'9", athletic, pretty strong, not a great shooter. Right. Like, so all those things, I was like, if that could be what he is like that. And I don't think that's a ridiculous expectation, but that's the kind of player. I don't think he's a guy you run offense through, Derek, but just a guy that makes a huge impact on the game. I think if we're going Big Ten right now, is Cliff Omarui ridiculous about a comp for him?
No, I like that one. That's a good one. I know that in the past we've talked a little bit, and I know that the staff kind of thought, is he a Moussa Diabate? I think he's a little bit more rugged, more physical than Diabate was. Now, we didn't see Diabate progress forward in Michigan beyond 1 year, but I think Omarui is someone that you could throw in on the block, and I think that Morez, as he continues to progress, I mean, that's something that you can do to him now. But he's not maybe your primary option all the time. But yeah, I think that Augustine was just so good running the floor and able to get rim to rim, play the pick and roll. I think that's something that obviously Morez is going to be able to do, and then just so much of a presence on the glass. I mean, to be the program's all-time leading rebounder, that certainly makes sense to me. LeBron, before the meniscus, was more of an athlete. I think you don't have that injury, and he's probably just putting up ridiculous rebounding numbers. I mean, the grit and kind of the dog, as we like to say, like that lines up with Morez as well. He's a taller, maybe like a Brandon Dawson, like we talked about.
Yeah.
Michigan State, like there's some of that too. So
I heard Lon say Mike Davis. That's my Weber voice. Mike was slim, right? Like he was not the toughest player in the interior, and he had a face-up game that was really good. Heck of a rebounder though.
Mm-hmm.
So just some players of what I think could be realistic expectations for him. But they only got one commit in the class of 2024, Derek. We've talked about maybe only one other guy that they could add. But I do want to bring up a name we haven't talked about a lot. That's Mikey Lewis, a guard that Illinois has been involved with for a while. Just got a Kansas offer. Seems to be having a pretty good summer.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the top scorers in the EYBL throughout the spring. His team didn't make it to Peach Jam, so he's kind of playing in they call it now the PIT, playing off the NIT. But yeah, I mean, he's a bucket. Like he's a 3-level scorer, a guy that shoots it well from the outside, can play in the mid range and pull up, and also get to the rim. He was on the Oakland Soldiers, so he's out there on the West Coast. And Illinois got in early in the spring. It was kind of a later blooming recruitment. I think the only official he's taken so far, he went to St. Mary's. San Diego State's been in there. He's got a couple of like Arizona State, UNLV. Some of those type of players in his recruitment. But yeah, Kansas jumping in. I know in the past, like there's been some blue bloods who have thrown out an offer in July after a big Peach Jam, and you still don't know if they're really going to push. Like I know that like EJ Liddell got a Duke offer at one point, and Duke didn't ultimately become a big player. So we'll see what that looks like. But that shows the type of AAU season that he's had to command that type of interest. Chester Frazier's recruited him hard. He's talked about taking a visit to Illinois at some point. But, in terms of a combo guard that can score it, obviously you have that in Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, but you can never really have enough guard depth, capable ball handlers, shooting still something that Illinois wants more of, and he's definitely one of those too. I mean, I think he was shooting 40% from three throughout the bulk of the AAU season. So he's really good. He's really good.
We've talked about Jason Jakstys out of Yorkville. I think you got another look at him. Derek, what'd you think?
I thought he had a pretty good weekend. I know that kind of on the front end, he definitely was impressive. And then you got into some of the bracket play, and there's going to be times you're just going to face better teams, but they got blown out in bracket play in one of those games, and he didn't do a whole lot. He's a long-term prospect. He's a long-term guy. His lack of strength still hurts him at times in terms of rebounding or just guarding guys that kind of really want to bully through him. And I just like his skill set. As you look offensively, 6'10", can handle it on the perimeter some, can shoot it. I like his stroke looks pretty good. And the more I hear, I think Brad views him as Coleman Hawkins-esque. Like I think there's some differences there. I think Coleman, more dynamic ball handler, better playmaker in terms of just getting guys involved. But Jakstys might be a better shooter than Coleman was at this stage in time. And someone to potentially take a redshirt year, just take some time to develop. You get him in the mix with Morez and Amani. And I just think there's a nice compliment there that some people have been skeptical. I listened to what Joe Hendrickson said. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. I know he said that, he's viewed him as a mid-major prospect, and that's kind of just been his offer list. That's who he's been throughout this spring. But Illinois has done a good job of recruiting him. I think they like him a lot. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if they ultimately try to push for him sooner than later, because they just like the long-term potential.
And let's be honest, like, you can only play 8, 9 guys. And how many guys nowadays are happy to redshirt, to learn and develop for a couple years? So I know Brandon Lieb didn't work out, and some of these other guys haven't worked out. We'll see if Nico Moretti, what happens with him. They hope Zachary Perrin could be that kind of guy. Obviously, that didn't last very long. But if you can get a couple guys bought into development, see where they are in a couple of years, and then figure it out. And if Jakstys is happy with that, rather than go to a mid-major where he might be able to play a little bit earlier, there's some value in that. There's some value in guys that are willing to put in that work and see what they become. Especially with an in-state kid. I think that makes some sense. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple months with him. I failed to bring this guy up last time right after he took a visit to campus. So apologies for that, Derek. But Jeremiah Fears also had a good week, it sounds like, during this past week of the AAU circuit. And Illinois seems to have really turned up its interest. We know the history with the Fearses. They really pushed hard for a while for Jeremy. And then right as it seemed to be coming to a climax there where Illinois could get him, Illinois seemed to back off. He becomes a McDonald's All-American, and he's going to Michigan State. But now Illinois turning it up for Jeremiah Fears. So one, let's start here. What did you see from Jeremiah Fears this past week?
I love him. First chance I got to see him at Peach Jam, and I saw him a little bit during the spring. He's just so skilled offensively. There's really nothing he can't do in terms of his shot making. I mean, he can make shots from all over the court, outside the perimeter, off the bounce in the mid range. He doesn't need to get stronger. I mean, that's something that as you try to go into contact and play on drives around the rim, there's some contested finishes that he can get better at as he gets more physically mature. And the thing to me that I've continued to keep in mind is like he's a 16-year-old playing up 17U. Like he's playing as a starting point guard on Brad Beal Elite on a Peach Jam team up a level. Like I in the past, there've been a number of guys that have played up like that. Like Jalen Brunson's one that come to mind. And then there's a few other ones that when they play 16 on 17s and they come back the next year, like they usually just kill it. And I think that's something that's probably very much in the cards for him. His production overall, like there was a game against the Wrens. I've talked about Dylan Harper. They've got another guard that's pretty darn good that he struggled. Like he went like 2 for 15 from the field and just had an off game. And there's been some of that for him throughout the spring and summer is that a little bit of fluctuation in his production. But when he's had good games, he's definitely looked the part. And I know you're going to bring this up, and it makes a lot of sense. I heard you say it yesterday, like the Steph Curry generation, definitely very much involved with him. I know he played with Jeremy last year at Joliet, and he was kind of just more of a scorer where Jeremy's that pass first point guard. And you wondered, like, is he going to be just a combo guard that maybe needs to grow a little bit more to kind of be that off-ball shooter, or is he a pure point guard? I think he's developed really well as a playmaker. I think his passing is pretty impressive. He still has time to develop and everything, but he's a legit top 50 chance to be a top 30, top 25 type of guy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I failed to mention 2025. Jeremiah Fears played Joliet last year, now heading to Compass Prep. A lot of these guys going to these prep schools. He's the kind of lead guard you build around. Right. Like that, to me, I've seen him a couple of times and I see that kind of Stephness in his game. Not saying he's that good, but he can score, he can distribute. You put him around Morez Johnson and Amani Hansberry and whatever else you have. Need a lot of shooting, Derek.
Maybe a Phoenix Gill.
Yeah, maybe a Phoenix Gill. Like that's the kind of guy who I think is probably a sophomore, could lead your team in scoring, could play a lot as a freshman and be an impact player right away. So what do you make of their traction, Derek, with this recruitment, given their history with Jeremy and given what they can sell to him?
I think the sell is strong. I think that a lot of what the family bought into with Jeremy applies to Jeremiah and that he can stay close to home. And I know that matters to Jeremy Fears Sr. because he's got a number of sons. I mean, this is going to be the middle one, Jeremy the oldest, and he's got another one younger than Jeremiah to stay in the area and watch him play hoops. And when I talked to him last month, I mean, he was talking about how excited he was to be in the Midwest and know, well, Jeremiah is going to go out to Compass Prep. They're not moving out there. They're not relocating. They want to stay in the Midwest. He can't wait to get out to all the Big Ten venues and see Jeremy. So that was a big reason why Illinois was a huge factor, Michigan State as well, because staying close to home matters. I think it matters to Jeremiah as well. And he's talked about legacy. He's talked about, hey, look how Io was received, promoted, the stage that he had, just and the lasting legacy that Io had, that D Brown had, a guy like Frank Williams had. I think it's something that really plays with that family. In the end, is it going to matter that Illinois turned away his older brother, essentially, or let off the gas his older brother? I still have that thought personally. I wonder if that's something that, when it comes down to it, is that going to be anything that is a detractor? But Illinois definitely is turning it up. I think they wondered for a while, was it worth it? Was it worth it based on the ending of the other recruitment to make that kind of effort? They decided it is. Jeremiah is definitely talented enough, whether you just to give it a shot. And then also the other factor is, like, there's so many other options. Like, has a chance to really have his choice of pretty much anywhere in the country. Arizona offered this spring, Michigan State, Kentucky's involved, and he's going to visit there sometime soon. So we'll see. There's still a ways to go, but I think Illinois has gotten good feedback recently. I think they've pressed it really hard. They made sure to be at all of his games. Brad was at a lot of his games, and they want him to feel like he's a huge priority, if not maybe even the top guy in 25 for them right now.
Any other nuggets from the weekend, Eric?
I saw a handful of other guys. I know, Larry Johnson is a big guard that they're looking at. Had really
not
been
not Grandmama Larry Johnson.
No, he was impressive. Yeah, he was a big time player, but a 6'4" guard from he's playing Team Thad. Didn't do a whole lot. I think that's it wasn't really a big standout weekend for him. So he's kind of a late bloomer. He got an offer from Illinois, a handful of other guys there in June, and they're looking for that combo guard. I think as it stands right now, Morez, I think Jakstys is there. They want a stretch the floor big man, even if it is kind of a longer term piece. I think Jakstys is their focus right now. Jackson McAndrew is a talented shooter from Minnesota that's got size, but I just don't think Illinois is really entrenched there. They kind of relate to the party. So I think Jakstys is their focus. And then beyond that, it's probably combo guard / wing, maybe best available in that group in terms of adding another guy. Jaden Glover is one they really like out of New York. I think it's tough because now that Rick Pitino's at St. John's, he's got a lot more appeal, and they're pretty strong there right now. But it's interesting because Glover makes the transition from, he played New York Jayhawks, which was Andre Curbelo's AAU team, to then playing for the Riverside Hawks, which is run by Kofi's mentor. So maybe you kind of raise your eyebrow a little bit and say, hey, does Illinois have a little bit more juice in that one now? We'll see. I think they're playing catch up. Maybe is going to be a Big East land, but he's a good shooter and a guy they've been recruiting for a while. Micah Robinson, too, is a guy I got to see at Adidas. He's mentioned that he wants to visit Illinois. Oak Hill Academy player that Chester's recruited. Kind of a 3/4, decent athlete, can shoot a little bit. And he's someone that they're looking at and involved with. Probably not going to be a big class, but that's kind of what you're looking at in 24.
Looking at the 2024-25 scholarship chart in front of me, Derek, I see a huge concern for me. Love what you have in the front court. Love you got dogs up and down this team with Sincere Harris, Ty Rogers, Morez Johnson. We'll see what Monty Hansberry in that, Dre Gibbs Lawhorn. Shooting. You need some shooting here. And I think that's going to be a huge need probably in the transfer portal. But we did hear, or we saw, Chester Frazier, I think it was a month ago, saying, looking for some net strippers. Yeah, they need some net strippers, man. Like there's a huge need, both short term. We'll see what Quincy Guerriere, Marcus Domask do if Shannon Hawkins improve. Goody comes back for a whole year, that should help them. But long term, shooting is a huge need here.
Absolutely. That's one thing that, Cole Serta, the way he played this past week, kind of sprinkled some salt in that wound. I mean, a guy that put up
Shrewsbury.
Yeah, man. Put up 30 plus a couple of times and hit a bunch of threes. And someone that they, when it boiled down to it, we're trying to get. It's just Notre Dame and Shrewsbury, they were able to win out.
Shrew's kryptonite, man.
Yeah, he's tough. He's tough. Morez Johnson is a guy that maybe in hindsight you might have wanted to play differently. He's still
I liked him. Yeah, he was inconsistent, but I liked him. He reminds me, and I don't think he's going to become this, but he just has a game that reminds me a little bit of Stauskas, who's one of my favorite players. Can he create for people? I don't know, but sometimes he does it. Can he defend? He's not good at it, but sometimes I see a flash. And then he can shoot the lights out some games, and then other games it's like it's completely off. So I get the hesitancy at some point, but the skill set is there.
Yeah, no, you described it perfectly. Like, the fact is, you'll have a game where, like, man, there are people around me that were asking, like, where's this dude going to school? And I was like, Iowa State. And they're like, really? And he had a couple of really nice showings where he's lighting it up from three. He's a better athlete than Serta, so he's got that on him as well. But then there's times where the shot's not there, and like you said, doesn't defend that well. Sometimes he doesn't handle contact that well around the basket, and so you kind of have that. Is that who he's gonna be in college? Is kind of just this up and down and consistent guy? Will he figure it all the way out and really be one you regret, or is that hesitation something that will ultimately pay off? And yeah, you can go to the portal and get shooting. That's something that Illinois is going to continue to want to be a player in the portal, but it would be nice to find a knockdown shooter. That's why, like, a guy like Mikey Lewis, who can definitely shoot it, a guy like Jaden Glover, who can shoot it from the outside, are pieces that they're going to be pushing for going forward. But that is something that's kind of standing out as a miss so far, at least in terms of their construction.
All right, Derek, let's talk about the current team a little bit. Quincy Guerriere, Marcus Domask, and now Justin Harmon are all on campus. We know Jeremiah Williams will not be here, but they're all on campus. We saw a picture, I think, briefly on Twitter. I don't know if it got deleted, but of Terrence Shannon in a cast, I believe, on his left arm. We haven't been able to talk with Brett Underwood in a little bit. I think Scott Ritchie and Brett Barons caught up with him at the Kendall Gill golf outing, but didn't get a lot from that. Doesn't sound like they're going to add another piece. He's wanted to keep a scholarship open, and unless some great guard, as we talked about, comes along, but getting Harmon on campus, there's some doubt at sometimes about what he's going to be. He's an important part, Derek, of a backcourt that has questions.
Yeah, and there was some uncertainty, the academic part of it, trying to get him here and ultimately able to finish up at Utah Valley, and now being able to be on campus. And yeah, with the way things shook out, Ray J. Dennis front, just point guard wise, I'm not saying that he's going to be a big option there. I mean, Mike LaTulip talked about it when we sat down and had the podcast with us three, that there's some concerns about if he were to be in a facilitating role, but he's played in a lot of ball screens. He's played a lot of basketball. The fact that and he can at least be someone in the second unit that can go out there and score it, especially if you get the version that showed up in the NIT where he was really a pretty impressive player. Defensively, they like what he brings there. He's very gritty, very competitive. I've heard that he's one of those guys that you put him in the 5-on-5s in practice, and you're going to want to bring it, or he's going to get after you. And I think that obviously Sincere is one of those guys too, so they like that about him. And a veteran that gives you somewhat of a proven commodity in the backcourt. Yes, he's making a jump from mid-major to high major, but good to get him on campus and have that solidified.
We've talked a lot. We know what Coleman Hawkins, Terrence Shannon are. We've talked about what they can be this year. We've talked a lot about Marcus Domask, Quincy Guerriere. They just got here anyway. But Derek, you got great pulse on this program. You hear things about how summer workouts are going. So let's go rapid fire here with some of these other guys. Dane Danger, a returning starter. I don't know if we talk enough about it, but a really good first season overall. Obviously, there were some ups and downs throughout it. It was far better. I guess it would be, against non-conference play and then probably early Big Ten play than he was late. But you see pictures of Dane Danger, man. He looks trim.
Yeah, he's put a lot of work in with Fletch continually. I mean, from the time that he got here after Baylor, I mean, he was like close to 300 pounds, shedded a lot of that, got in the best shape of his life. Now he's in even better shape. A lot of it that I've heard is just simplifying the game. And it's still something that is a process for him, but, on the block sometimes, trying to do too much, just instead of spinning and doing some fancy stuff, just power dribble and go up. And I think that they're trying to get him to just simplify a little bit more, and defensively trying to lock in a little bit better drop coverage. We talked a lot about that throughout the year. Of early on really good, then maybe got lost, and just processing things for a guy that didn't play a lot of hadn't played college basketball. So that was his first real experience at that. But I've heard he's worked really hard. The body shows that. And just simplifying the game, they feel like he'll have another step forward with that.
The key word there is processing. He was thinking through the game, which is understandable for a guy who's basically playing high major basketball for the first time of his career consistently. And that Trace Jackson Davis game just did something to him where he got that assignment. He was pumped about it. Didn't work out. Yeah, the defense just slipped ever since then. And Trace Jackson Davis, given how good he was last year, can have that effect on people. Ty Rodgers, we talked so much about him. I don't know if you have anything else to add here, Derek, but you talked to him the other week, and he's the point guard. He solidified that for you. What have you heard about him?
Yeah, he wasn't holding back on that. He wanted to put it out there. A guy that's very confident, that is really excited about this role, feels like he has the team at his back. And I know it's a process. That's one thing that I've heard, is that he's got a ways to go. They're spending a lot of time in the film room with him. After really on a daily basis, like an hour a day, he's in the film room with Tyler, with Tim Anderson, watching. I thought it was really interesting to hear him say, "Hey, they're throwing film on of guys that have done this kind of as bigger guards," and I'm sure he's watched some Jalen Pickett film probably too, of that booty ball type that he can bring there as well. And another thing I've heard is I think in the open court, he's doing some really good things, like being able to get out and he sees the floor well. He's skilled. In the half court, sometimes he doesn't slow down enough, maybe speeds through his read, speeds through where he needs to get to go, and just showing some patience. And that's just experience and reps. And we'll see how that materializes as we go along. The jump shot, I haven't heard a ton on that. I know that's the biggest thing that everybody wants to know is I just don't think we're going to get to a point. If I came out here and said, "Hey, the staff's telling me he's knocking down threes," or he's automatic from 15 feet, I'd be
Omar Payne vibes.
Yeah, I'd be very skeptical of that. So I'm not hearing that. I have not been offered that up, but I think they like his mindset. I mean, he's a guy that's gonna grind, is gonna put in the work. That's gonna he's a high IQ player already, so they're not worried about that.
Ups your defense, ups your rebounding. I would imagine it's growing pains, right? It's gonna be growing pains here in that role. The two stats I care about the most with Ty Rodgers coming up this year: field goal percentage at the rim. He was 59% last year. I think that needs to get closer to 68, 70. And then free throw percentage. Like you cannot be 39%. That's got to get at least north of 50, Derek, because he's going to get a lot of attempts. I'd like it to be closer to 60. But if those two things increase, I think he's really playable because he's going to get to the rim. He's going to get to the foul line a lot. You just can't have him be such a negative at those. I mean, for as big as he is, as athletic as he is, 59%'s got to be better. Just for comparison, RJ Melendez was 65% at the rim. Now he's more probably explosive of an athlete, but Ty's a really good athlete. So that's gotta go up for me. Go ahead. Yeah.
The left hand around the rim is something we've talked about, being able to get to that. And then they have had him talking with a shooting coach. They wanted to tweak his form on his jump shot a little bit. I think that at the very least could maybe play into the free throw improvement. But we'll see how that goes. We'll see.
Sincere Harris.
He was one of the guys right as summer workout started is like, "Hey, Sincere is one of the early standouts. We've been really happy with him." And, he's going to compete his butt off. I mean, he's going to be someone that, and Ty even said it like, "Hey, I love going up against Sincere because he's going to, as soon as they inbound me the ball, he's going to be right there to guard me 94 feet. I've heard it seems like Sincere is maybe just matured a little bit in his approach. I've heard that he's really kind of fallen in love with the weight room, that they really like how he's approached that. And a guy that's not just lifting because he has to lift, but actually wants to get in there and sees the upside. I mean, he's got twitchy athleticism. You've mentioned it before. I mean, Tajay Moore in a couple of years, like that's within the realm of possibility. The shots it's still going to be a question mark.
I would sign up for 32% from three again on a larger scale, right? But again, with him free throws and finishing at the rim, we know how many dunks he missed. Free throws 20%. Like that's got to improve. And then field goal percentage at the rim 55. That's got to be closer to 62, 63 for me.
Yeah, I do think they believe that he'll be a better finisher around the basket with more strength, which is the game slowing down for him some. Shooting wise, it's not a strength. It's not a strength for him. Can he be better than
32% again from three?
Yeah, probably not. Probably
because I think it was like 16% during Big Ten play or something like that.
Yeah, he had a couple early. They are repping him some in some ball screen, just trying to make sure that they have as many capable ball handlers as possible. If anything were to happen to Ty or that just didn't work out, I mean, there's a world where Sincere is one of your backup point guard options. So they're repping that with him. He does have some handle. You look back at his high school film, he played with the ball in his hands a decent amount. That's something that they're working on with him too.
Yeah, Sincere during Big Ten play, 3 of 17 from three. It's a very small sample, but 18% if I'm rounding up. Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, speaking of that guard position, Derek.
They love him. They think he's as talented as really anybody in the building. I had been told that he's also one of, if not the hardest worker on the team right now. So a guy that has a chip on his shoulder, has felt like he's been overlooked, and because he didn't play a whole lot at Mount Ver, his ranking dropped from a guy that was once in the top 50 range, and he's ready to prove that he's a big time player. I mean, he's got a lot of physical gifts. Like he's bouncy, he can shoot it like heck. He's a really good player. He's really talented. Now, I think learning the game, going from playing overtime elite where it's a little bit more wide open and less structured, and there's some talented guys in there. I mean, you get the Thompson twins, who were, lottery picks that Dre actually played decently well against their team. He also shot like 41% on like 7 attempts from three per game in that. He's a very, very capable shooter. So I've heard he shot it well. I've heard that he's just, with his talent, that's definitely popped. It's just being able to get him to just kind of learn the nuances. It's more, college basketball is so much more detail oriented, knowing assignments, knowing reads and all that kind of stuff, and just getting him to learn the game and get up to speed. But they're really excited about him.
He seems like the ultimate X factor for the season, given the need at the position, has talent. After the Sky Clark experience, let's be honest, you get a little concerned about guys who bounce around high schools as much as he did, but the talent is not without question. Like what he did at Overtime Elite was really encouraging late in the year. And boy, they need a player with his kind of bucket ability, his shooting ability, and he's an explosive athlete. So, you've seen guys, and I'm not saying this is the expectation, but Ohio State's had like Malachi Branham and some of these guys just come out of nowhere. Maybe it's like these 60 through 80 prospects and become real league guards that make a big impact. You thought Sky Clark or Jaden Epps could be that last year at points. Jaden Epps was last year. Man, if you could get Jerry Gibbs-Lawhorn to do that, it changes the potential of this team. Speaking of guards, Nicola Moretti, anything on him?
He's gotten stronger. I know that was important as a guy that came in pretty slender, and you wonder about, especially defensively and just the physicality in the backcourt. At all positions of the Big Ten, you got to be able to handle that. So they wanted to get him stronger. I'd heard he added maybe 10, maybe 15 pounds since he arrived mid-year last year. He's someone that sees the floor well, good passer. You put him in pick and rolls. He's able to make creative decisions. And that's why when they first saw him at the Nike Academy or the NBA Global Academy last summer, that it reminded them a little bit of Curbelo in that sense. Now, he's not as athletic as Curbelo, just not probably overall as talented as Andre Curbelo was. But he is a pass-first playmaker that's his strength. Shooting-wise, he's more advanced than Curbelo was, has the ability to shoot from the mid-range, has the ability to shoot from the outside some. I think he's still probably ideally a year away from really playing significant minutes in the backcourt. Ideally, he's going to have a chance to compete with those guys at the point guard to show that he deserves to get more minutes. And then Maybe he either surprises there or by just necessary need of having to play him. But I've heard he's been decent, okay, and there's not a ton of expectation for him this year, but still hope for him long term.
How about Amani Hansberry? Just arrived, a month ago. Talented guy, probably has battled just to get some minutes this year, but certainly a guy I know they're excited about long term.
Yeah, I mean, long term, Brad loves him. Like the skill set at 6'8", got that big body, but just great passer on the perimeter, high IQ. One of those, he's going to be one of those dirty work players, I think, especially early, like trying to just scrap for any type of minutes you can come by. When he's on the court, he's going to play 100% motor, dive on the floor, just battle for rebounds, loose balls, that type of thing. Offensively, we'll see how that goes. I think that if he's around the basket against legit size, we'll see how he finishes at the rim. The mid-range game is something he's flashed at times. Can he be able to be a little bit more consistent with it? So he has a ways to go because he is battling Coleman, Guerrier, Dane. I mean, that's going to be tough for him to get a ton of minutes early. Sounds like he does need to get in a little bit better shape, but long term, again, like if he can kind of weather the storm of this year and maybe not play a ton, then it really opens up for him to be a big factor in that front court going forward.
I saved this guy for last because it kind of goes under the radar because of how poorly Illinois played to end the season, how well this guy played. He's one of the bright spots late in the season. Luke Goody made 2 threes against Arkansas, 2 threes against Penn State, 2 threes against Purdue in those games. Really started to emerge, and I don't think we should overlook him. Marcus Domask obviously has a more proven skill set and overall probably more balanced player than Luke at this point, but this team needs shooting, and Luke Goody is close to a 40% three-point shooter at the college level. Now you get a full season of a guy that Brad said, we'll see if it would, I don't know if it would happen, would have started last year, and I still think he's a guy that could potentially start this year if they want to bring Domask off the bench to be more of a play-through option offensively. So I think I don't want to do we should talk more about this guy or this guy, but Luke Goody is going to be a big part of this team.
No, yeah. I mean, he's possibly someone that is being a little bit overlooked, and we'll see how he battles a guy like Domask. Not to say they can't coexist together, because you're going to need some more shooting on that court, and both those guys can bring that. But Luke is good of a spot up catch and shoot guy on this roster. It sounds like, I mean, he's really shooting the cover off of it in that sense. That's no surprise, because like you said, he was making threes late in the year, and we know that's kind of his profile. And also, I mean, you kind of get what you get in terms of just knowing how to play, knowing where to be, the effort, the toughness that he brings for sure. Have heard that Brad is really running him a lot, like not in like a punishment sense, but like wanting him to move without the ball. I think that's something that you look back last year, Illinois had a lot of stagnation around the ball and a lot of just guys.
Just show him Andrew Funk film.
Yeah.
Of what that guy was doing running around screens.
Yeah.
And maybe show Brad some of that Shrewsbury film of getting open looks. That's pretty damn good.
I agree. I think that they've kind of looked at that and said, you're going to be of high value of, we got guys, if they can break down the defense, kick it out to you. If you're open, you can make that shot. But how about having people chase you around the floor, chase you through some screens, be able to run some sets for you to get you freed up. And I think that's something that they've worked on this summer, just to try to have Luke constantly moving through the half-court offense. And that's something they want to really push him to get accustomed to and work on shooting off the move. I think that's something that, it's different than obviously you're standing in the corner and spot up, but that's kind of been a focus for him.
Derek, before we go, one last topic I want to bring up, and that is 2 more assistant coaches can't recruit on the road. You and I are not surprised. It is Tyler Underwood and Zach Hamer. This is what most programs seem to be doing. I know Indiana made headlines by hiring Calbert Chaney, and I think some Illini fans were hoping something like that could happen. A former Illini great, but the new rule just allows more on the court coaching, and I would imagine these guys continue in their other roles. But what was your takeaways from the official announcement that these 2 are now also assistant coaches, but they don't go on the road recruiting?
Made plenty of sense. I think that, yeah, there was a thought that maybe you could. The fan base was a lot of them were maybe hoping you could bring in an outside voice, somebody that had some maybe different ideas, whether it be offensively. I know that usually the former player is beloved in terms of those type of hires. I know that, it's not really a secret. Corey Bradford's been trying to get involved with the program, and I think that was maybe a direction Illinois could have went. But yeah, Zach and Tyler, very well respected, hardworking guys on that staff, and will continue to do what their role entails. It's just now you have them being able to be more involved, just period, on the practice court and getting out there and doing that. So I'm not surprised by it. A lot of programs are just, instead of creating a new position, just rewarding the guys that were in those support staff roles and just giving their ability to go out there and be on the court. And I know that there, of course, were reactions with Tyler, or just wondering about, should Brad have added a new position? The reality is, we're talking about, when you have Brad, you have the 3 assistants. We're talking about the 4th and 5th instructors on the court. Like, it doesn't have to be some kind of blockbuster, like, type of outside the box addition. Tyler's been in that jersey. Like, Tyler is someone that he's in the director of recruiting role. I mentioned he spent time with Ty in the film room, and he's done that. He's taken guys under his wing in the past. Like, Trent Frazier's a guy that he spent a lot of time with, of helping him just learn the game. And I think that Tyler's well equipped to be out there and help in that type of capacity. Zach Hamer has a lot of analytical experience, film experience, was at the NBA level starting out, and then coming to college. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And you reward the guys that have been in those roles, and their roles will stay the same. They're just now able to get on the court as well.
Yeah, and nepotism, I get it, right? I get how some people react to that. Personally, Tyler. I've talked with Tyler several times. He's impressive, and he's had this dad to learn from the entire time. So sometimes these guys, just like these, sons of NBA players, tend to be pretty good. They have somebody to learn from. It's the same thing with coaches. Now, in an ideal world, yeah, I think it'd be great if Tyler, for his first full recruiting assistant coaching job, got some experience with somebody else. I think they could help him for the long term. But in this role, I wasn't surprised. I think it's basically what he was doing. Just now he can actually be on the court legally for these practices. So it made some sense for some continuity there. Plus, Brad's got some fresh voices here recently, and Tim Anderson and Chester Frazier. I'm wondering, how that evolves with new coaches. And, you had some success last year, but also some setbacks, like how that goes ahead and improves. So I get why some people, especially given Miles Smith and Bryant Ferentz, why their reaction to that would be the way it is. But kind of expected this all along, and I kind of get it from Brad Underwood's perspective there.
Yeah, and it's different. Like, if Tyler was, hired as one of those roles, like when Orlando Antigua and Chen Coleman leave, and he's a full-time on the road recruiting assistant, something that he,
or even the next one, because he doesn't have any experience doing it, right? Like, that's that would receive way more criticism than the role I think he's getting now. Like, the role he's getting now, I think he deserves.
Yeah, I agree. I think as a guy that was a former player, he's been within the program, he's been around basketball a long time. You're not putting him in a situation that I don't think he's over his head in. Right. Like you said, I understand some of the people that maybe would prefer an outside hire, an outside voice, and we'll see. Like, I'm going to be very curious to see what the offensive system looks like this year. Last year was a failure. They weren't able to put the team in the best position or have something that stuck. And if you're kind of in that same role or same situation this year, that there's valid criticism to be had of maybe Brad needs someone from the outside to bring new ideas, to bring a new system or whatever that might be. But in the meantime, in terms of these guys being qualified or not, it's not like we're talking some huge type of pay raise or anything like that either. Like, I think it's fine. I don't have personally any issue with it. And I think it's different. I think it's different than the Miles Smith situation. And personally, in my opinion,
I had no issue with Miles Smith as a grad assistant. When he got hired for the linebackers coach job and he didn't hire a defensive coordinator, had a big issue with it.
That's a little different. Yeah.
Derek Piper, I think we covered it all. Off season or not, an hour of Illinois basketball chat. Thank you, Matt. Last thing, did you get your hot chicken? Did you stop somewhere in Tennessee or Nashville to get your hot chicken?
I didn't. No. I was driving late and I just decided to push it and went through. Didn't get any hot chicken. I got some when my brother graduated from Vandy grad school back in May. I did get some Hattie B's hot chicken there. So that held me over for this summer. But yeah, anytime I'm in that area, it's hard to pass up, but I did this time.
Thank you, Derek, for the insight and get some rest after the Peach Jam experience, man.
Will do, man. Thanks.